Hi, it's Nicole, and today I've got a month in review double page scrapbook layout. This is the sketch bundle that I am using to do today's layout. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, and this is linked down in the description box below. Now, if you follow Lisa over at Life and Layouts, she used Simple Stories for the Record for her month in review as well. We were chatting a couple months ago, and I mentioned that this was something on my list of things that I had planned. And it was just kind of funny that we had both picked not only the same collection, but we are both doing our 2024 photos for this month in review project. I've also seen a handful of people in various Facebook groups, whether they have a YouTube channel or not, are also using this collection. So this just kind of goes to show you how popular these sort of calendar, office, everyday type of layouts, or not layouts, collections are for month in review projects. Now, I loosely, mentally thought, okay, I'm going to use this bundle. More than likely, I'll have enough photos for double page layouts each month, and I only printed January. After I did my layout and I was like, let me think about what's going to happen for February, not necessarily planning or printing photos yet, but like, let me just go look. And I realized that my photos are all, or not my photos, the sketches are all very different. So as of right now, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to follow like the sketch for February for my February layout, or because I liked January sketch so much, if I'm just going to reuse January sketch each month. I'm not 100% sure. My photos I cropped in Photoshop to be the size that was depicted on the sketch, but instead of printing and cutting them out individually, I put them in these little like quadrants, and I left some openings to decorate with pattern paper and stuff. This was so much easier. It still did not occur to me to go ahead and just do this on some letter-sized paper. That 1000% would have been the smarter option. So when I go to do February, I'm hoping that I remember to do that. It would have been just so much easier to drag and drop these into a document. I don't know why it never occurs to me to do that. I think in this instance, I was printing that 4x6 for the right. I was putting 3x4s on that 4x6 canvas and printing from there. I was printing for other layouts. So I think in my mind, I just was kind of rinse and repeating the 4x6 printing. And I wasn't really thinking about working smarter. So it's just one of those things that like I don't realize until I go to edit the video. Now, I feel like month in review is very similar in my mind to creating with collections in the sense that I've got a bunch of new product. It's not really been cut into, and it's very overwhelming for me when I have so many different choices of paper and embellishments and all of that. So I feel like the first one always takes me a little bit longer. Usually by the time I get to like April, I've found my footing and rhythm, and I've figured out what's working, what's not working, and like where that's going to go. Typically with month in review, I go through like my photos on my computer are stored by like year and then by month. So I'll open up a month worth of photos and I will make a list of whatever events and layouts I want to make, and then everything else goes on month in review. I don't do like every single photo, but I'm not the type of scrapbooker that will do a layout for every single photo that I take, every single memory. I prefer to have those like one-off random just kind of everyday life photos that I find on my phone to be housed in month in review like this, where I can look at it kind of as a whole and just see what's going on and what's going on in our lives at the time. Sometimes I'll have photos carry over into other layouts. If it's like a birthday or a holiday, I might have one or two of those photos sprinkled into month in review, and then the majority of the photos will be like on their own layout. So while this does take me a little bit to kind of find my footing, I was actually surprised that I knocked this out. I want to say like within 2 days. I had finished up a bunch of projects that had like deadlines, and I looked at my calendar and I was like, you know what? I have a good like couple of days where I don't have anything planned out. So I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and we're going to work on month in review. I did a creating with collections layout. I'm working on a card today. I'm actually somehow managing my schedule pretty well without thinking about it. So that's kind of fun. I think having friends that are super organized rub off on me. I also think coming back up to my room at night and on the weekends is also really helping like keep the ball rolling and like keep the creativity going. Sometimes I tend to take like a big break and then it's harder for me to get back in. So back to the layout. The sketch actually took me longer than it should have to realize that some of the areas that I was putting pattern paper on, I think was supposed to be like open space, and I didn't figure it out at first. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. Like, I like the paper that I picked. We're going to go with that. So my pattern paper choices do deviate a little bit from the sketch, but this one I stuck pretty close to it until a little bit later when I needed to figure out some spacing and where to fit some things. I also thought that this one would be kind of a short video. Turned out it wasn't, and I cut out a bunch of stuff, but I get kind of mixed opinions on what to leave in, what not to leave in. Some people prefer the longer videos because they're like me, where they put them on in the background while they're working on stuff and they kind of work on their stuff and look up at the same time, but they enjoy somebody talking for 20 or 30 minutes and it feels more like crop environment is what I've been told. So I don't know. Sometimes when I'm editing, I'm like, do people really want to see me cut paper like this? This is me fixing the fact that none of my paper's lined up. I have no problem trimming my entire base down to fix the edges of my layouts. So I did pull in some of the basics from Simple Stories. I grabbed an orange to mat those photos on for the right. I basically just picked a color that I hadn't used in the pattern papers so that it would kind of contrast pretty well. Don't look at that one on the top. I'm going to fix it. I used the orange grid paper, which was actually scraps from my design team layout. I'll post it above here in the eye. That one, I mean, it's grid paper, so of course I love it. I did go back and I cut another piece to fix it. I just always think it's funny that I'm like, okay, I wrote down or said aloud, you know, the size that I needed to do, but I was talking to a friend when I was doing this layout, and so math was hard. So I tucked those pieces in behind my photos, and I managed to get all those photos lined up pretty well. The borders and stuff aren't super straight, but it's fine. It's fine. And I also thought, it was probably around this point where I was like, you know what? This is going pretty quickly. I'm probably going to skip the stitching. You know, we'll make it go a little quicker, skip the stitching, and save some time. So I did that thing where I second guess myself. I send a picture to a friend and I say, should I stitch on this? And 9 times out of 10, no matter who I ask, the answer is always like, yes, stitch on it. So I did ignore the urge to do tone on tone rainbow stitching on that striped strip. I was like, no, we need to speed up the process a little bit. We're not going to get bogged down. Like, I've done it before. I absolutely love it. I don't need to do it on every layout, so I'm just going to do some basic stitching lines. I drew some lines on the white background and on, I think, the yellow pattern paper. Like, I was like, we're not stitching on the blue, we're not stitching on the rainbow, we're gonna limit the choices and speed up the process. Because for some reason, I feel like I have to be the slowest stitcher, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know. I also almost never stitch like up here at my desk. I always almost just take it somewhere else in my house to go like hang out, watch TV, like make sure the dogs are good. Like, I don't, it's so weird, like the routines that I get myself into. So came back up after I stitched. This is probably the following day. And then I'm going to start the long process of decision making. I tried to do what I did in a previous video and cut out as much of that like dead space of just me flipping back and forth between embellishments. I tried to do it as much as I possibly could. I will say with month in review, I try to use up any of the pieces that say the month. So anything that has like January depicted on it or the number 1, I do try to get as much of that on the layout as possible because odds of me using it for anything outside of month in review are pretty low. I did go to the 6x8 paper pad and I grabbed this ledger pattern, and I'm going to mark off the size that I need to fill in those empty spaces in my photo area. I wanted just something kind of neutral. I didn't want to bring in another color. Usually with month in review, like I did it with Creating with Collections Volume 3, and that collection from Simple Stories each month had like its own color scheme, whereas for the record, the color palette is across all of the different months. So what I'm loosely trying to do is focus a little bit on a couple colors, whichever ones basically show up on this sheet here. So I'm going to cut off the January 4x6, and eventually I'm going to actually cut this down as well and cut off the like the 2 sections so that I can have January going horizontal, and then I can rotate that other piece to put my journaling on. And then I had cut, these are the tags that are on the 6x8 pattern paper pad. They were a pretty close match to the size of those photos. So I'm going to use these on a couple of the openings to fill in. I picked a yellow and an orange because I had already used those colors. I'm trying to, I guess I would say for January, I'm focused mostly on the navy and the aqua because that's what's depicted on almost all of the things that say January. And then I'm bringing in some of the yellow and the orange. The other colors like the red, the pink, the green, and the gray are depicted on that rainbow stripe, but it's fine. All of the colors show up in the embellishments and the different like the tags have a bunch of different colors. I'm not super focused. I'm just kind of trying to have a little bit of fun with making each month a little bit different. So I remembered that I had this pack of die cuts where it's like a pre-layered cluster, and they are pretty large. So at this point I'm like, oh, okay, wait, I know I want to use this because like I said, anything with the word January on it needs to find a home on this layout. And I was like, okay, where are we going to fit this? And this was sort of what started this piece over here on the left. So I figured out I can tuck it behind the January. I've got this big tall area over here that I can just sort of stack everything together. And now I'm going to start getting into embellishing as much as I can. There's so much product in this collection, so many different things. I found this little phrase on the rub-ons that says, well, dang. And I was like, you know what, this is cute for this little open area next to the photo of our smaller dog. I was cleaning the bathroom and I had left the chair that goes in like the vanity space. I had left it pulled out, and so he helped himself up onto the counter and into the sink while I had the water like getting warmed up to clean the counters and stuff. And so I walked around the corner and found him just having a good old time in the sink. So I felt like that was a good little phrase to put next to him. And I go back and forth through all the embellishments basically for the rest of the layout until I feel like I've used all of the January pieces and I've filled in anything that I feel like needs to be filled in. I did go ahead and use foam adhesive to pop up the sticker. And I think this is where the title was shown on the sketch. So I think it's mostly just that section over on the left that I've kind of gone rogue. I'm still trying to, like, I want to use these rub-ons. I realized now that I'm editing the video, I didn't use that little number 1. I probably could have somewhere, but I was trying to use these anywhere that I possibly could. I'm going to go ahead and grab this little layered label piece and put it down here on this pre-printed label on the pattern paper. I do realize that that blue section of pattern paper, I more than likely put it on my layout upside down, but I'm okay with that. I basically flipped it upside down so that the label was facing this direction. You know, you gotta break the rules and you do you type of thing. I like to use, this is just a bone folder, just to make sure everything's on there. So far I haven't had any issues with these rub-ons. Like, they've actually, like, they come off the backer pretty well. They're not, I have some older ones that I'm not sure if it's just the age of them or the way that they were manufactured. Those ones are like sticky. Like, if you take them off the little like wax paper sheet and set them anywhere, they're going to transfer. These ones didn't have like that tackiness to them, but I still make sure that I keep the little like carrier sheet with it so that I don't accidentally set it on a photo. I've been known to do that. This is the floral die cut pack. At this point I realized I hadn't really looked through it and opened it, and I was like, you know what, there are some things in here that are this like navy blue, and I'm like, yeah, let's try to get some of these on the layout. And I just go basically from one pack of die cuts to the next. When I have this much stuff spread out, like I said, I get a little overwhelmed, a little squirrel syndrome. So when I start feeling like that, I go back to an area of the layout that I've already made decisions on. I like the decision that I've made and I can move forward. So I'm going to work on this area over here that's going to go for, I call it journaling, but really it's just going to be like a list of information for all of these little smaller photos, which I find it funny that the majority of them are the dog, but he's my little shadow. He's my little best friend when I'm home. He's pretty much everywhere I go, except for upstairs. He's not allowed to go upstairs. He gets into trouble, but he's cute. So he gets, you know, he gets forgiven. So I typed up my information for my photos, ran that through my printer. I'm going to take a border punch and do like a notebook edge to this little January piece just to kind of help it look a little different. At this point, I've just got a lot of sort of square cut pieces of pattern paper over here. So I'm going to add that on this one. I thought about doing it on this one too, and I was like, you know what? I don't have enough room. I am going to cut the left and right margins down just a little bit so that it's not the same width as the January, so that when I got everything layered together, it's, you know, looks a little better. Back to those dang rub-ons. I was like, there has to be something on here that I can add to this. Like, I'm trying to add more, and I'm also trying to not always go to die cuts. At this point, I think I've completely forgotten that there's 2 12x12 sticker sheets and a sticker book available to me because they've gotten buried underneath pattern paper. But I found some little, I think these are little florals that I tucked in next to the little number 1. I'm going to go ahead and start adhering everything over here on this left area. And this is the point in the process where I'm realizing that I really like the overall design of the January sketch. And it's making me wonder if I should just recreate this layout for the rest of the months. But I looked real quickly at my photos for for February, and I don't have as many that I think would qualify in my brain for a month in review. So more than likely, February is going to be a single page layout. So I'm going to decide if I'm going to rework this January sketch for my February, or look at the 2-page February sketch and rework that into a single page. Or I also have the single page calendar bundle as well that I can probably go look at. And I might just mix and match like the 2 sketch bundles and kind of go back and forth based on what my photos are and how many photos I have. That's typically how I decide with month in review. When I used the other Simple Stories collection for creating with collections volume 3, I came up with like a general layout for month in review, and I would just go back and forth between a single page or a double page based on how many photos I have. And I did that for 2020. So some months I had a ton of photos just because, we were home. There was a lot going on. And then when school started, there was even more going on. So I usually just figure out how many photos don't need their own layout, how many are left over for month in review, and go from there to figure out, does it really need to be a double? That's one of those things that I kind of constantly ask myself is, does it really need to be a double? Do I really have enough photos that it needs to be a double page layout? If I can make something into a single page layout, I will, just to save a little bit of space in my albums. I think perfect world scenario, I'd love to have an entire year only take up 2 albums, but realistically it's probably closer to 3. And I say this as somebody that doesn't have any year, quote unquote, done. With the Dark Side Challenge, I was focused on 2020. I really want to get back into that. So I'm trying to kind of carve out some time to go back and look at some of the months in 2020 that I need to kind of wrap up. And then I will be able to say, like, I finished a year. And I'm curious to see if it exceeds 2 albums and goes into 3. So we'll see. You guys, I tried to cut out so much of this. It's literally just hours of me sitting here flipping through embellishments. I used the little thumbtack stickers in place of something like an enamel dot. I really wanted to do some tiny stacked hearts like I did with the other month in review, but it was one of those like, no, you have a ton of stuff in this collection. You have enamel dots, you have thumbtacks, you have hearts that are in this collection. Save yourself a little bit of time and save the tiny stacked die cutting for another series or another project. So with that, there is my completed month in review for January 2024. I hope that if you've never done a month in review, this kind of helps you look at it. I will link below to Lisa's version of her January 2024 with the same collection in my description box. And again, I'll try to link to any other month in review type things I possibly can. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys here, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you come back. I hope you find something else to inspire you, and I'll catch you later.